let's get down here. All right, hey YouTube. So today's video, or whatever time it is when you're checking this out, video is going to be a response to Patriot in the Dark. So he's a gentleman, found his channel through the Crazy Scotsman and a couple other channels out there, and he's doing a challenge, I guess, or a request video of taking apart a weapon blindfolded or in the dark, basically, because he's visually challenged and he's challenging everybody to do it. And while you're doing it, though, explain what you're doing, which becomes the hard part, right? Explaining to everybody how to disassemble your weapon and how you're doing it pretty much as you're feeling through the process. So it's a really good idea to do this, regardless if you're going to do a VR or not. Go check out your weapons and blindfold yourself and disassemble them, because it just gives you better familiarization. If you're explaining it as you're doing it, you can go to teach somebody else how to do it. And I think his biggest thing is teaching somebody who may be visually impaired as well. But being able to explain those fine movements is a challenge for sure. But we're going to do this, hopefully do it unedited, one take, and it doesn't make a mess. So here we go. All right. Without suffocating myself, we're going to start off. So first thing we would always do is remove the sling in a 2-point, 3-point, or whatever, 1 point. You can remove however you want, but I won't go into that. I've already removed the sling for the purposes of this demonstration. The first thing I'm doing, I'm going to orientate my weapon in one way. I'm going to have my muzzle to my left. I've got my charging port, my charging extraction port up. So that's where the rounds come out when they're out of the weapon. So if I got my muzzle to my left, my magazine well is away from me, pointing away, letting me know my ejection port is up, facing away. I can always, then I can make sure I have a safe weapon. Even when blindfolded, I can put my right hand on my charging handle back here towards the rear. I'm up receiver. I got a tactical latch, so it makes it easier to grab. But I can put my left hand over that extraction port, extract, hold that to the rear, and I can physically inspect the chamber, because I can't look in it, right? So I'm going to physically inspect it. No brass, no rounds. I'm good to go, right? All right. We're ready to rock on our disassembly. So first thing I'm going to do is find my takedown pins, which join the upper receiver and lower receiver. And if I find my magazine well with my left hand, my pistol grip with my right hand over here. So my magazine well is obviously my open area where my magazine goes in. I can feel that. Go to the front side of it towards the barrel and work my way up, and I find, well, there's my extraction. I might want to close that, but I can find my takedown pin. If I come straight up that edge, I find my takedown pin, and for my rear pistol grip, I can come straight up it, and I can find my takedown pin. Now these takedown pins go left to right. So I'm going to need to turn it over. I'm going to take out my rear one first. They go left to right as I'm looking down the barrel. So it's going to go away from me as we're looking at this. And then my front one as well. Slide that out. Both my takedown pins are up. My upper receiver and lower receiver come apart. I'm going to set my upper receiver aside over here and just go with my lower receiver. So I have my trigger. I can go, and directly behind the trigger I can go straight into what's my buffer. I can feel my buffer tube run into my lower receiver. Now you'll feel, for feeling this out, where my rear takedown pin is, comes straight into the open portion of the lower receiver. You'll feel an indent pin, and it goes up and down. And you'll feel that spring goes in and out. Where you feel that spring go in and out, you're going to push down that indent pin, let that buffer out. Feels like a metal tube. Having a tool handy can help this process, but we'll try to do this with what we got available. Holding that back. Come on now, get out of there. Fat finger and it doesn't help. My buffer come out. So I got my buffer coming out. It's a small cylindrical object. I'm going to set it aside over here to my right. My lower receiver parts will go to the right. My buffer spring comes out. It's just that, a spring, coiled metal to my right. And pretty much my disassembly of my lower receiver is complete. And I can set that over here. I go to my upper receiver. Bringing it back, I want to keep my orientation so I know what I'm doing. So I know which way I'm orientated. So I still got my barrel to my left, my charging port, my ejection port up, even without. And I can also use my charging handle as an orientation of how that goes with my top of my upper receiver, my sights, so that that right side is my ejection port. All right, I'm good to go. So I can go back to my charging handle to the rear of that upper receiver. Just grab it with 2 fingers like I'm forking something. I don't know. TCU horned frogs, I don't know. And pull that out. I'm going to feel my ejection port cover open. And I'm pulling out in that charging handle, and my charging handle and my bolt carrier group are going to come out the back. So my charging handle is a long T-shaped aluminum piece. It's really lightweight. Push that off to my left. Keep it within arm's reach because I'm going to need that. And my bolt carrier group is next. Now I'm trying to keep my orientation here. Stay over there, lower receiver. My bolt with my bolt to the front of the way it came out so that I can break this down properly. So on my bolt carrier, my bolt's in the front. It moves in and out of the bolt carrier. To the rear of the bolt carrier, there's a channel, what I call open channel, where it's been milled out for lighter weight purposes or whatever, and there's a hole in the very back. I can put my pinky in. So when that channel is, I can come forward to that channel, and there's a little key that comes off the top of that, which is your gas port, connects to your gas port where the gas comes in the bolt. But on the left side, if that's the top, this key is the top where this little port comes in, and the channel in front of that on the other side is where my firing pin, retaining pin comes out. I can reach in there with a nail, fingernail, and try to pull this out. It's just a cotter pin. So I got to catch that cotter pin and extract that out. Now on a lot of AR bolts, it's not a problem, but on these DPMS, this cotter pin has to go in a certain way, in and out. If you turn it up like this, it won't go in, but you got to be sideways. But I want to take that firing pin, retaining pin, put it in my charging handle for safekeeping, so it doesn't roll all over the place because I am blindfolded. Then my firing pin will come out of that bolt carrier. I can slide it all the way out to the right side end of that bolt carrier and put that in my charging handle for safekeeping. Next, I'm going to take up my cam pin, which holds my bolt in. So my bolt's moving in and out of the carrier. I want to push my bolt all the way into the carrier. So I hit it with my left hand to push it all the way in. Then I find that if I move down the key about midway down the front of the bolt carrier, I'll feel a pin that turns. It's rectangular in shape. I want to get it so that that rectangular is kind of orientated long ways down the bolt carrier. And then I can pull it up, or if like most people do, I just tap it out. Again, I want to orientate it long ways, like the rectangle long portion of it. Fat finger it a little bit, and then it pops out. So as my cam pin, I put that in my charging handle as well. And now my bolt will come out of my bolt carrier. And I am pretty much disassembled. If I had handguards on in the old school, I could take the old school handguards off, but these don't really need that for disassembly. Sights are on with tools, so I'm going to take those off for these purposes. So reassembly, pretty much repeat the process, reverse it. Find my bolt carrier, my bolt. I want to take my bolt to my left hand, so I put it in make sure my channeled end, my open end of my bolt carrier is in my right hand, orientated right, and put that bolt in. Now what you'll find is these gas rings, they kind of stick a little bit. When you're going to put in, it feels like you're getting resistance. You just turn it and it'll slide in. Next, find my cam pin, and I'm going to go back to that hole I found. So I got my bolt pushed all the way in. I come down, I find the key, I find the hole with my index finger here on the carrier where that cam pin was, and I can insert it back in there. Now my bolt has a hole in it. I have to turn the bolt to find that hole that it fits in. There's two holes in the bolt, so it's going to fit in one or the other. It doesn't fit in both. So you'll feel it might give up a little resistance. Again, I want this cam pin orientated the rectangle long ways down the bolt carrier. So again, I get that in there, turn my bolt, so I can get that hole lined up. Alright, where you at? This is the hard part. Come on, it shouldn't be this hard. So I can feel when that hole shows up. Either one of them will feel like you're getting a little bit of movement. That's not the right one. Spin my bolt. On the other side it should be. Come on, get in there. Right? Alright. Don't do this in front of the camera. Alright, hold on a second. So, in my bolt, it's one of these two holes it's got to go in. One of them's got a little bevel off to the side, but I can't feel that. At least not with my half numb fingers. So put my bolt back in there. That's what I'm aiming to get that cam pin into. So when I go to put my cam pin back in that bolt area, it should go back in here. I'm trying to do this and show it without putting my hands all over everything. So maybe bolt's got to be in. Find my orientation, make sure my bolt cam pin is orientated the right way. There we go. Now it goes in. Alright, then I can just turn that cam pin so the rectangle is orientated the other way, the very top of it, and then that bolt will work in and out, like so. Retain it. Now I find my firing pin back in my charging handle. With my right hand, put it in the end of the carrier group. I can also go in the milled out section to get it in there. My firing pin back in the way it came. It's going to be in a tiny hole in there. Alright, it gets it back in. Now your cam pin has to be turned the right way so that the rectangle portion of the cam pin is pointed across, not in line with, so that firing pin will go in. So now it's in with the firing pin. Now I get my retaining pin, and for the purposes of most purposes I have to catch up my hand, feel that. Go back to my carrier group. Again, I'm going in left to right. With this one I have to lay it flat across the carrier, the bolt carrier. Like the cotter pin is flat like this, not turned. It doesn't matter on a lot of ARs, but these are finicky, I guess you'd say, or just that's the way the machine. I got to find my firing pin retaining pin hole. So it's a larger area where my firing pin retaining pin goes in versus the other side, which is a tiny hole I can barely feel. I can feel this on the left side, just in front of the milled out area of the carrier group, forwarded on the left side as it's orientated to the front. Find that, make sure my firing pin's all the way forward. I should just slide in there. Alright, firing pin goes in, work it in. Had to squeeze that together really good to get that in. So my bolt carrier group's back together. Found my charging handle. Again, I got my T-shape. I've got my recessed long portion, which is going to go down in the charging handle like so. Like you can see, right? So the front of it has a little hole notch on the front that sits into my bolt carrier. So that key on the top of the bolt carrier that I can grab with my right hand here, I'm going to set that in there, and I can feel it. Now I have to grab my charging handle so that I've got my right on the. Now I've got two where the charging handle slides on the side. I've got two notches or indents, or not indents, tits, I guess, or whatever, little pieces that stick out. These are going to fit in my upper receiver inside here. So when I go to put it in from the rear, I got to find where that sits in the top. So you'll feel it snap in like a puzzle piece. You pull it in and out. That's really hard to describe. It's really, you just got to feel it. You don't even look in there, you just feel it. Those two set in. I can keep my charging handle partially pulled out, not all the way to the rear, but partially in. And now I did it, I can't get it back. Okay. Let's see here. Set that back in. Oh, I had it, now it's not. Okay, find my tits. That's too far out. That's not it. That's not it, because there's the slide it in. There we go. Goodness. Partially out the charging handle. Pick up my bolt. Now I pick up my bolt. I want my bolt all the way forward. I don't want it pushed in. So I use my left hand, push that bolt all the way in. Correction. I want it all the way out. I want to pull it and extend it out. So when I go to put it in, I've got that key and orientated to the top. Slide the bolt into the back opening of the upper receiver. And it's going in like so. It's hoping that I didn't push the bolt forward. They get that key settled in the notch in the charging handle. And then push them both together, home together. So both in, they both charging handle works the bolt out. I can check that before I put everything else together. Now I'm going to go to the lower receiver. So the upper receiver is back together. Lower receiver, go back, find my spring, put my spring back into my tube. Past the indent. Get my buffer tube, my buffer itself, the cylindrical object, and push it in past the indent pin. I had to push down the trigger there to get that back out just to double check it. Let me, I'll bring my spring out a little bit and put the buffer tube in that way. There it goes. I can double check it, just make sure it's settled behind that indent pin. And now I've still got my muzzle orientated to the left, my magazine well is to the left, my pistol grip is to the right, so I know it's orientated right. My takedown pins are orientated up because they work right to left. Then I find the marrying point where those pins go into with the rear of my upper receiver. I can fit that with my buffer tube. Right where my buffer tube went is going to fit right snug into the back, so I can just line them up, and I'll feel where the U shape above my magazine well here on the lower receiver comes to where the takedown pin's going to come through, and I can fit that into what I can feel on the upper receiver is where those pins come through. And it fits together snug. So I got it to where it doesn't feel like it's going to move. I got it lined up. I pushed my takedown pins through. Okay, they're both in. Double check, feel. Okay, I can feel them on the other side to where they're through. And now I'm reassembled. Again, I can put my charging handle to the rear, make sure I'm clear. Check physically the chamber. Alright, once I've done that, now I can function check it. Save. Check safe. And we're clear. Alright, folks. Take down, blindfolded. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Live free.